So I'll explain later how we talk the police out of this. Hi, welcome to Wizard World Virtual Experiences, Popular Culture Psychology. I think it's episode 13. When we run the latter half of our videos, it throws me off on the count. I am Dr. Travis Langley, Distinguished Professor of Psychology at Henderson State University, with these fine folks, and we are here to talk about The Handmaid's Tale Season 4. Panelists, who are you? I'm going the order I see you on my screen clockwise. Erin, who are you? What are you?
I'm Erin Currie. I'm a licensed psychologist. In my former life, I used to practice in college counseling, but now I am a professor and I profess many things, and I incorporate wonderful geeky things whenever I can in either realm of the world. I've also had the amazing opportunity to help out with some of the psych geek books, such as Westworld and Doctor Who and all that kind of stuff. So you can find me there as well. That's me.
Brittany.
Hi, Brittany Oliver C.S. Navarro. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm currently a grief researcher, and I'm a new mom.
Congratulations.
Andrea.
Hi, I'm Andrea Frantz. I'm a professor of digital media, and my area of expertise is actually First Amendment law. So law and ethics is my thing.
Scott.
First of all, happy Juneteenth to everyone. I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher from Illinois State University. I also produce a YouTube channel called Dark Loops Productions, and I'm thrilled to be here to talk about this amazing, amazing show.
Lindsey.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Lindsey Wotanis from Marywood University in Scranton, PA, where I'm an associate professor of multimedia communication, and I teach mainly journalism and common theory courses, and I also advise the student newspaper, and I'm just like a Handmaid's Tale superfan, so I'm also thrilled to be here.
And I should go ahead and point out that we're talking spoilers. We waited till the end of the season for this one, so you do realize we're going to be discussing the end of the season. So we're going to lead with that. Anything surprise you there?
Where to begin? In the final couple of scenes, the scenes in the woods, but everything about this last episode of the season was sort of mind-blowing. Everything from June sort of taking back over the power, shifting all of the tides, as it were, to Fred in the woods, to the final view of Luke, seeing June in the nursery. All of it was mind-blowing and incredible.
That last shot of Luke is particularly haunting, actually.
Oh,
I love it. I love the way, first of all, that episode is called The Wilderness. Fantastic title. I love the fact that she got to be honestly that person, and she came to honestly be that person. And Luke just she realizes Luke can't be with her as that person. And I just thought it was stunning. That's usually not what you see, right? So I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I feel like for the whole show, you're kind of waiting for this reunion moment between her and Luke, right? And then when it happens, you're just like, is this really all it's cracked up to be? And then you see that final scene and it's just like, yeah, this isn't going to work. This is not going to work for them in any kind of way. He cannot possibly understand what she's been through. There's just no way.
I think it really highlights the shift or dramatic shift of what trauma can do, right? And especially prolonged continuous trauma. And to see her character ebb and flow and change, and he almost kind of stayed where he was from season one. And it's the poetic reality of the situation of this is significant trauma that he's just outgrown their relationship.
Yeah,
call it.
And watching like and they think they did a beautiful job over this last season and in its entirety, and especially in this last episode, of giving you little snippets of like, oh, remember, remember how they were, especially when she was on the ship and then she was coming back over. They were showing us little snippets of how they were, just to show us how far she changed. And I thought that was just remarkably done. And the other piece that I want to piggyback on that, Brittany, is that idea of, everybody wanted her to be the scared victim. And she had that, yeah. But nobody wanted to see the angry victim. Nobody wanted to see the anger. They wanted to embrace and help with the fear, but nobody wanted to do the anger, like, until bits and pieces. And so I like what y'all are saying about the whole, like, can he embrace angry June?
You make an interesting point there, because you think about real life victims. When they're discussing what they've gone through and dealing with it, then there will be the people who react to them if they're showing their anger as if they're taking it too far, and judging them on that. Elena Stafford, and I apologize right now if I mispronounce any names, because I'm sure I will. Elena Stafford, I really want to see June get Hannah. That is a must to me. I know I never could let her stay in Gilead. So there is that. Although we just lost a potential source of information to help her get into the town. Where did they say she was? Colorado?
Yeah, Colorado Springs.
Boulder. No, Colorado Springs. Yeah.
Yeah, Colorado Springs. I think that's an interesting point, though, because I'm not sure if I do want to see Hannah ultimately end up with June. I feel like Hannah has also been through so much trauma, and I mean, it was hinted at throughout actually this season when they're talking about the 86 children, and so many struggles that those children were going through, trying to figure out, where do I belong, who do I belong to, who am I? Right? Hannah has been this sort of yo-yo back and forth. I think about yet more trauma being inflicted upon her if in fact she's snatched and taken to Canada. Now, I've read the book, The Testaments, and so I'm not going to foreshadow anything there, but if they end up going there, that's a little bit different take on it. But I don't know. That last time that you see Hannah, when she's in the glass cage, you're feeling like, how much more can that little girl take?
Also, whoever has been raising Hannah, they did not have the ability to keep Hannah from getting put in that glass cage.
Mm-hmm.
And well, these are some big shots with Gilead. So whatever they're doing to treat her well, they're still big shots with Gilead. So they don't deserve her. How many of you have read the Testaments? Okay, our non-psychologists.
Brilliant. I recommend it.
So it not everybody knows there is a book that is a sequel, and my understanding is that Hulu has now gotten the rights to the Testament. That doesn't necessarily mean this show will head in that direction. They could do the Testaments as a separate story. So it takes place later. And I said in our previous, the three main characters in it turn out to be June's daughters and Lydia, and so that will be later on. So some people are speculating about where Lydia is heading. Is she moving in the direction where she could possibly be the person that she will become in the Testaments? And so first, I want to hear from those of you who don't know where Lydia winds up in the Testaments. Where do you think Lydia's going?
I mean, one thing I just love about this show is everybody wears a comfortable self in a context. Mm-hmm. And then when that context changes, they wear a different self. And the issue is how strongly can I wrap myself in it? So Lydia this season just kept getting bounced out of her space. And I think when that happens, it's more of it's a larger probability she'll become a rebel herself, start her own way of getting girls out once she can't be that Lydia anymore because the context won't allow it.
I do think Janine is the pathway to her better self, because we've seen her with Janine. Janine is her soft spot, and so I'm wondering, I have no information, so this can't be a spoiler. This is just a presumption, that her soft spot for Janine and Janine's now ability after converting to be determined Esther, if that's not going to put another crack in Lydia's faith or belief that this is the exact right way of being.
I think I'm thinking about earlier in the seasons where she had made the statement of like, you have two choices, you have freedom from or freedom to, right? And to exist in this world. And I just feel like when you are so indoctrinated to believe, like truly believe these things, it has to be a significant shift for you to be rewired to assume that something is different. And so I would say it has to be a tremendous loss of power, or it have to be something that was so consequential that it's, I mean, you can sit through watching two people be drowned, you can sit through stoning, you can sit through, and it's all justified.
Mhm.
And I would just have just to piggyback off of this idea of like, how would this faith be shaken up so much that I no longer see this way? And I feel like it would have to be, in my opinion, be something with loss of power.
And then, well, look, guys, we're talking about the end of the season, but not wanting to spoil the book. But for the people who haven't read it, I don't want to spoil the book for them. But for those who do know, does it look to you like Lydia could be heading the direction she winds up in the book, or where do y'all? Even if you do know, what do you think of Lydia, where she is now in the show?
Fort Lindsey.
Well, the book, for what I remember, I wrote the book, gosh, right when it came out, and I don't even remember when that was.
It's been a little bit.
Years ago, right? I believe that in the book, Nicole is about 15. So it's
Okay.
not right now. It's there's time, right, for her to go through a transformation. So is it going to happen right away? Are they going to make some kind of connection? I don't know how they're going to get there, but you can start to see some of the cracks, I think, in her interactions with Janine. But it does remind me too of those flashbacks, the early flashbacks of Lydia when she had that relationship with that young mother and the boy. And you really think that she's going to change her ways because of that relationship, right? And then it turns out that she kind of turns back on a dime and doesn't. She kind of turns on that young woman. And so you wonder to what degree that's a kind of a repeat kind of scenario. And will she turn on Janine again if the circumstances lend themselves to that? I don't know.
Yeah, I would just say that I don't want to spoil the book for anybody, but I would challenge people to think a little bit about the fact that after the story that we see of Lydia's background and being a teacher and ultimately helping that little boy and his mother, and then not, you wonder what happens. How does Lydia, this is the key question, how does Lydia become an aunt? And ultimately it's that moment that you've got to kind of look at and say, okay, once you realize how she becomes an aunt in this Gilead system, the question becomes, how does she stop with that? And that's really what the Testaments is in some ways very much about.
They also show us she has a very passionate side that leads to a pretty humiliating moment for her. And I think that's important to who she is, right? This passion she sort of feels incapable of expressing. And it's not just about sex, but that part of her life, having to have it repressed as it is.
Well, she very much wants to be appreciated. I mean, that's a basic human thing, but this is a very strong aspect of her personality. She wants to be respected. She wants to be appreciated. When she finds out so many handmaids hate her, that hurts her feelings. So she is not someone who's doing these things to them and is indifferent to their feelings. And who does she have left out of those earlier ones? Well, the one who has the physical reminder of what all this can do to her. Janine's eye patch is right there in Lydia's face every time she sees her.
And if I'm not mistaken, Janine and June are like part of her first class of handmaids, right? So she's had this whole, this history that she has with Janine and June that she doesn't have with the new handmaids. And that history is shaping what she feels it means to be an aunt. And takes its toll. I mean, that for me, that's part of the message. Suffering makes everyone suffer. So
You ask where we think Lydia is now, because you don't really see Lydia. Am I right? We don't really see her in the wilderness.
No.
She's not in that last
I
episode
don't
at
think
all.
so.
Oh, or is she? Is that with the? I'm forgetting. Is the Esther episode the one before then?
The one before that.
Okay.
That's the one before that. Yeah. So one wonders really ultimately how what happens to Fred then plays out in Gilead, and certainly with Lydia, because it's clearly, I mean, it's the handmaids and the other women who've done this. And so once that gets out, it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out with Lydia.
So speaking of what happens to Fred, what's motivating these guys, Joseph and Nick? What are they doing? Why did they say, oh well, we're just gonna give him over? What do they want?
If I particularly Lawrence, here's a guy who probably agreed with the idea of Gilead, but not with the execution. So he was able to keep that all abstract. And, one of the more bizarre or intense traumatic moments of the series is when they show up and make him have sex with, June. So this guy's been playing the edge of this system the whole time. He's probably the smartest guy in the room. And June's his intellectual equal, probably the only one he has. And he gets her, she gets him, and nonetheless he stays in Gilead. So I absolutely appreciated the way they had his character and Nick's character create a plan with June to take care of Waterford. And if you watch that episode again, as soon as June is sitting at the table saying, what would you like to do to him? And I want him to be scared and I want him chased through the woods. Well, that's exactly what they end up doing. And I thought that, because first time I watched it, I thought they were just talking, but no, they actually made that happen. That was really intense.
Yeah, he seems like somebody who could be a heck of a villain, actually. He has some very good qualities. He's likable, at least at times. But he did believe in Gilead. He believed in what they did to begin with to found it, and he doesn't seem to be just struggling to hang on to his own place in that society. I think he actually wants to fix it, which, well, they overthrew an American government, and as you know, and now we believe, hey, that actually could happen. How about Nick? I'm talking Joseph Lawrence. Last time I brought up, do we still like Nick? And it's like, now here we are, this much later on. We know he's got a ring he's hiding, but it's like, well, June's married too.
I'll say one thing and I'll shut up. What I loved about the Nick character, and I'm not like I like this guy as a person, but what I love about what they did with his character was at the end when he and June get together, they have that meeting, and her ability to be affectionate with him, but unable to be that way with Luke, to put that little bit in the story, it does a lot to describe trauma, right? Luke was love in her traumatized world. Not Luke, I'm sorry. Nick was. Luke wasn't. So Luke is just not part of that space. And when she's with Nick, I just really like the way they handled that, because people love, and they do it in all kinds of different ways and different contexts. So him as a character, like, I don't know, but I love what they did with his character.
I'll go through a few more remarks we've been getting here. Let's see. Daniel P. Kinney was glad the girls got their revenge on that animal. Salvador Michelle Patron. I love that June couldn't stop fighting, and even more when she realizes she shouldn't, as the men who are her allies betray her. And still with Salvador. I was thrown by the scene of support for the Waterfords. Was there any foreshadowing of support for Gilead in Canada? We get this one scene where there's a crowd out there to support them. We don't know who they are. I don't remember any real foreshadowing for that.
I mean, unless you count some of the other countries where there is that ambivalence about, like, do we deal with the fact that you're enslaving people and raping them to make babies, or do we just pretend that isn't a thing so that we can have an increase in population growth in our country too, as we outsource women from your country to do that? The only thing that I could think of that was a little bit of that was early in what, season 1 or 2, season 2, when she has that interaction with the diplomat or whatever, saying, "Get us out of here, this is not consensual," and the person goes away and does nothing.
I will say that I think it's a really interesting commentary that the Waterfords have that gathering of people who are supportive of them in Canada, because I think it says a lot about the fact that honestly this can happen anywhere, and there are crazies no matter where you go. And it's very reflective, I think, of some of the stuff we've actually struggled with in our country. And so I thought it was a really important statement.
Nobody's safe.
Well, then you have to differentiate this idea of, and I was talking to my husband about this earlier. If I joke and say, you know, I live in San Diego and I can throw, you know, a stone, no pun intended, I can throw a stone and that wherever a house it lands on, they have complete different ideologies than I do, but they truly believe them in a different way, like heart and soul. And is it because people are coming around to the idea that we support them because of that, because we support their ideologies, or is it these people are misguided and they still deserve compassion? And so I think that is a tricky place to be in, because I'm thinking about like Luke's reaction of just being like, you know, couldn't he have just died in Gilead? Like, could that have just been enough? It's like, well, then that would have to suggest that there should be compassion and kindness and consideration to people who do have all these atrocities. And so I don't know how that support would look like, if it's just like, no, we truly believe what they believe, or if it's more like everyone deserves, like, you know, some sort of compassion, because some people can be misled.
I think some people probably were watching June as she's heading back into the house at the end and wondering, why hasn't she wiped off that blood from her face? Seems like, you know, you've killed a dude. And neighbors don't know who you've killed or where, that it was in no man's land. So, you know, most people might think to wipe off the blood. I've got my thoughts on why it's still there. Any thoughts y'all have on that blood on her face?
It's the writer's way of saying to Luke, this is who she is. That's what I took from it, right? And then Luke has to make his choice. And of course, you can see him slump and he's sort of making his choice. And then the blood gets on the baby's face, right? And that's just as poetic, right?
Lindsey, you started to say something?
I was going to say the same thing. I feel like it's just a vehicle for us to have that communication with Luke, right? It's a communication tool so that he knows what just happened. But anybody pay attention to also the fact that she was wearing that red overcoat for a good part of the season?
Yes.
And I was like, why is she wearing this red overcoat? And she wears it in that last episode, right? When she kills Fred, which I think is kind of poetic.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought if I had ever been a handmaid and been forced to wear that red, I would never wear red again. Once I escaped, it would be out of my wardrobe completely. And the fact that she wears that red overcoat the whole time, I thought, really, why?
It's almost like that is her identity, and that she still can't let go of it. And there's that scene, right, where she's talking to Emily, and she said a good mother would be able to let go of this, and I just can't let go of it. And like, I don't know, for me, that's like sort of represented in the coat in some ways.
And the idea that she's not willing to also let anybody else forget about it. You know, so it's not just her not wanting to let it go, but she's just like, no, it's not enough that he spills the beans on Gilead and does a bit of damage, and now Serena and he can just go off and have a nice big house in Geneva or whatever they ultimately end up doing. Like, no, absolutely not. And I think that is maybe her way of just keeping everybody in this thing. It's like, it's not over. It's not over for me anyway. And so I'm going to make sure it's not over for you either yet.
Yes. I also wonder if the red sweater will evolve into different kind of red outfits later on, because I think about like taking back words, like derogatory words for people, like people of color, specifically my community, and how that can be empowering. And so instead of it like, if at this time, because there's so much for trauma for her to work through and so many things to evolve, if it eventually will become like this big end of series hood up red shirt, and it just seems like I'm taking it back, like this crimson means something to me, and I'm deciding to have this like shift, this cognitive like reframing of what's going on.
Yeah, it's like you guys can't put me in red. I can put myself in some red, and it means something different.
Yes.
And I can walk around in it in public, and I can, witness what happened, be a witness to what happened all the time, so that you all don't get to just get comfortable and pretend it never happened, right? That's consistent with her character from season 1 till now. And it was awesome.
I will say too, going back to the blood issue, throughout the entire season, there is so much blood and so much filth. Like, they're filthy constantly. They're bleeding constantly, or somebody's bleeding constantly, right? And that becomes almost like a war paint the entire season. And so again, very symbolic. Why didn't she wipe off the blood before she walked in the house? That was her war paint, right? And that is who she is now at this point. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, and she was owning it. She was walking into the house and saying Luke needed to see this part of her, because that made the point a whole lot faster than her just saying, I can't stay. He'd argued with that. He comes in and sees her wearing some dead guy's blood. I think he even knows whose blood it has to be.
I gotta say, that's one thing that this show has done so well from the beginning, is show me, don't tell me. It's been extremely disturbing to see what they've shown. But this last season, when she gets out, or she's struggling to get out, and she's not in these homes, and she's not playing this role, you're probably feeling the edginess, the newness of it, just like she is, because you've seen it for 3 years. I mean, they really immersed us in her world. We've seen so many 4 or 5 series shows that just haven't shown us nearly as well. So that this whole season was almost documentary like for me. I mean, it was just that visceral. I think it was a major accomplishment.
Well, when she and Janine are in the middle of the attacks of the bombs going off, there's a very, very strong sense of their confusion for right where they are. We don't see the big picture, which also saves on special effects and stuff, but we see what they're going through in their tight little spot among the noise and the smoke. It's a very well acted, well written, well directed show. When she's testifying, there's the long one cut of her saying all that. Of course, even she can have her text on a teleprompter in front of her, but she's not reading most of it, and the camera's very slowly moving in on her through the entire time she's talking. It's just a very well done, well delivered show.
Along those lines, I really liked in the last episode or the second to last episode, I watched them together, so I'm blanking on which one's which. As she's driving back from meeting up with Nick, and watching her face change and be happy and sad and all of this kind of stuff, that really tightened side profile as she's just cycling through emotions, was along those lines just gorgeous.
So if she gets Hannah, will she be happy then?
No.
Nobody thinks so?
I think I loved when Lawrence told her, even if they put him in prison, it's not going to be good enough. And he knows right? He knows what she's been through. He knows that it's not the idea that you're over. This is one of the problems truly traumatized people have to live with, is everybody telling them to just get over it. This is who they are now. That's why I just love the blood on the face at the end. There's no getting over. There's only living through and maybe creating a new life, but there's no thinking yourself out of it. And that's what I love about this show. They showed us, they and use a bunch of words and we had to think about it. They showed us, and it was horrible, brutal.
Yeah, a couple of you were listening when I was talking about post-traumatic growth for something else the other day. People have gone through trauma. They may have had full PTSD, and probably still have some symptoms, especially mentally reliving the trauma. But they take their pain and grow. They find purpose, and you can argue with whether her growth is healthy or not, but she definitely fits the aspect of taking her pain and finding purpose. I think she would be one of those, like that guy dressed as a bat I write about a lot, who would not want to go to therapy, would feel that somehow managing to heal, to get over it, would be selfish.
I really like the juxtaposition of how she's processing versus Moira. And I think that, like Travis, what you're saying is exactly that. Like Moira has channeled her trauma into, helping refugees and doing the work that she does. And I think she's even having a hard time understanding why June is not able to kind of get over the hump like she has. I mean, she wasn't in Gilead as long as June was. She didn't go through the same kinds of things either. She went through a lot, but I guess not the same exact experience as June. So yeah, I wonder what you guys think about that.
She's in the room when they're all sitting around talking about him going to prison or whatever, or something. And she says, Moira says, I just want him gone. And then she leaves. And it's when she leaves that they hatch the plan for the woods, and she's not in the woods. And I think she's not in the woods because just before June leaves, she looks up in the house through the window and she sees her Luke, Moira, and the daughter. And she thinks, that's them. That's their love. That's their life, right? I can't be in that. And all the rest, follows. And then I think she knew that that was more in a different space than she was. It was just...
And it's very interesting too, that Emily is in the woods with her. And Emily is also the one who goes through that shift where she's trying really in the therapy group she's trying to deal with it, and she's trying to forgive and everything, but ultimately in the episode where the aunt comes to seek Emily out and to apologize, and Emily can't take that apology, and then ultimately the aunt dies, commits suicide. It's Emily who you see next to June in the forest, and who's exacting who harbors that same anger, and has sort of broken through to be able to sort of embrace it and say, this is who I am now. After all of this, I'm not going to be Moira. And so I do think that there's sort of some lines that have been drawn here.
Well, it's the friendly reminder that recovery doesn't mean recovered, and that it's all subjective. And so my version of recovery might look different, and I might ebb and flow with that. And so I today I might feel very virtuous and compassionate, and tomorrow I might be angry, and the next day I might be sad, and that there's not one place to go.
Yeah, I think Emily has felt more lost than Moira or June, not knowing how to feel and how to deal with the past or the present. She has seemed less purposeful or more purposeless, but wanting something to change. And June, we know June is very good at manipulating people, as Commander Joseph Lawrence has commented too. He knows this about her. She is good about, like, when she brings that aunt there and Emily can't forgive her. Emily unleashes something from her own darkness in there. And then when the woman has killed herself, Emily hopes she had something to do with that. And we go to these looks of satisfaction, like, when Iago has gotten Othello mad over a comb or something in the bed. It's there is this, and of course June will firmly believe that she's doing what these people need. She's doing what needs to be done for the greater purpose, for her purpose, but she's also willing to sacrifice people.
Well, and Joseph, isn't it Joseph that points that out too? Of like, she's gonna get what she wants, and you keep on hurting people. You hurt the people that you love.
Elena Stafford, I saw Emily as a damaged, weak person when she got to Canada, but when June showed up, I saw her become stronger. Emily needs June.
I just love the writers work so hard to let everybody be who they are. So instead of, having a narrative where the writers tell us in the end what the good outcome is, they just let all these people be who they were and expressed all these different ways of being in the space. And I can imagine how difficult it is to write like that. And I just thought it was stunning. It doesn't leave us having an ending that's clear, but that's just adult. So
that about the ending. If Hulu has gotten the right to test through the Testaments, which takes place like 15 years later, that would suggest that within the Handmaid's Tale, well, we're not going to see Gilead fall because it's still around at the start of the Testaments. I don't really know how the show will end. Getting Hannah will obviously not be enough to her. She still want to lead a rebellion, and so I don't know. She has purpose, definitely. It's hurt Gilead and get Hannah. Those are some very strong goals for her, and as long as Gilead exists, there will be room to hurt Gilead. As long as anybody who ran Gilead exists, there will be room to hunt them down in the woods.
Well, even extending off of that, what a perfect day to have this conversation, especially on Juneteenth. It's not as if slavery ended and things were just great in our story. So the story of America specifically, and if they were to adapt that to the Handmaid's Tale, it's like, okay, so is there going to be more of a discussion, even if they burn Gilead down? So even if it's gone, what then? Because there still is so much story left of the people who are survivors, the intergenerational trauma that's going to be passed down, outlived. How does this affect relocation? How does this affect economic stability? Like, there's so much more conversation instead of like this happy ending that it's conquered.
Yeah, there's a big world here. They've got their own country. So much of it we have not seen. So many other victims all over the place for however much of America they've gotten. And we get glimpses of how other countries react. It is, in just this original setup for this book, a fascinating world got created that we'd love to know more about. We don't see the big picture, but again, because it's a very personal kind of story with whichever character's perspective we're getting, which so much of it is June. And we're a quarter till the hour, so not a lot of time left for the live stream. There was somebody I wanted to bring up. There's so many people worth talking about. Esther. Did she really fall in line, or did she decide that, Janine's right, I need to act this way to get what I want?
She's the new June. She's a June that grew up in that space. But I would not be surprised to see she and June actually connect in one way or another in later seasons.
I have a hard time believing she'd just completely roll over. I mean, in a I'm 100% in kind of sense. Like, I'm 100% in to keep myself alive and to plot my next thing. But I would be very sad and disappointed at this point, at least at this point, if she had just completely bought in.
Yeah. I mean, from the first time we met her, she was ready to do some killing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
June was her superhero.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I'm
really not convinced that Janine has rolled over either. I think that Janine is far more cunning and calculating than we're actually maybe led to believe. And I think that Janine has some plans of her own.
Yeah, I would like to see a scene in the next season of what takes place between scenes with Janine and Esther in their last episode. Between when, here she is with her hunger strike, and then suddenly, oh, she's just fine. Something's missing between there, and I can see where this would not have been the time to show it. This because it was heading into the end of the season. It was very much about June and the Waterfords, I look forward to seeing where McKenna Griggs goes with this. Is she going to be the Red Hood to June's Batman or what?
Can I just say, I don't think Lydia fell for it either. In other words, it's not that she's consciously aware of what's going on, but she's changing, and she's more, her mind is more open to these changes. And she may not come say, oh, you guys are lying, but she doesn't believe it the same way she did a year ago. And I think that kind of gradual reorganization of her character was something they'll work on.
That particular moment, sorry, it served her for it to look like these girls were in line, and that she was absolutely right about the usefulness of Janine. You stupid little younger ants. Are you supposed to be doing something?
No.
All right, any last thought before we sign out? Yes.
I was going to say the shift really of testing the reality of they're honored to be able to do these things and to be able to produce children and, be raped and assaulted constantly, versus I recognize that they're doing it because they have to, but I'm okay with that. The compliance.
Destiny 22 did a hand clap Dr. Travis Langley. I'm not sure which part of what I said that was on, but I clap you all. It's this has been a fun and interesting discussion about some brutal and terrible, and it's difficult to explain this story to somebody else in a way that makes it sound like, how is this any fun to watch? But there is hope. There is this strong sense of hope, even when the worst things are happening, even when there's the shock of how many of them just died. So there is always this very strong sense of hope, and that is what keeps us going. And we want something amazing and wonderful to be where they wind up. All right, final word. All right, where can people find you all online? Erin.
At MySiteGeek on Twitter.
Brittany.
At B Therapeutic on Instagram.
Andrea.
At Andrea Frantz 221 on Twitter.
Scott.
At Dark_Loops on Twitter, and at the Dark Loops Productions page on YouTube.
Lindsey.
Just at my name, Lindsey Wotanis on Twitter.
At Superherologist on Twitter, and Dr. Travis Langley on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for Travis Langley. I'm easy to find, or on Amazon, where you can find 13 books where I and fine folks such as many of these discuss the psychology of these characters and stories that are fascinating to us. I thank you all. Thank you out there. And and Salvador says thank you, panel. Bye.